evening. Excuse me. Good evening. I'd like to call the October 12th, 2022 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Christo, absent. Mrs. Miller-Herrera.
Present.
Mr. Dodson.
Present.
Mr. Mastriani.
Present.
Mrs. Collins.
Present.
4 present, 1 absent.
A quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Mastriani, will you lead us?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a couple of quick things. Tonight we do have an executive session, but we'll be holding it towards the end of the meeting. And also, after we do the liaison reports and the miscellaneous, the town board will be having a budget workshop, which you're more than welcome to attend, although generally the public is not allowed to speak at it, but you're more than able to stay and listen. And lastly, the town of Rotterdam will be celebrating Halloween on Monday, October 31st. Designated hours for trick-or-treating are from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. And the Rotterdam Police Department is once again asking parents to cooperate by having their children off the streets by 8 p.m. Okay. I will open the public hearing on the draft Town of Rotterdam Comprehensive Plan. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Mr. Godlewski was going to get me the board, but he forgot.
Somebody interrupted me. No.
Guilty, I'm sorry.
He goes, I won't forget.
Good happens.
I forgot my record.
What'd you do with my board?
Going on the permanent
What'd you do with the
record
clipboard?
You left it
You
I
left it?
thought somebody else might come in.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just in
All right,
case.
well, you can just take it out. It doesn't say. It doesn't, oh wait, hang on. Okay. Bob, you put public hearing, but are you for the draft comprehensive plan?
No, I'm
Okay.
here for the chicken.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure. All right, and it looks like the first one is Patty Metelzik.
Hello, I'm Patty Madowitz. I live over at 457 Sanborn Road in Pattersonville. I was reviewing the draft of the comprehensive plan, and I noticed some verbiage regarding how we want to preserve and keep the diverse neighborhoods. And some of those neighborhoods are residential, some of them are more rural. I'm here to say that I strongly feel that we should maintain the rural areas and maybe have some plans in place for different aspects like solar farming and the windmills, that those would ruin that beautiful landscape. So just would like you to consider that. And we should just maintain those beautiful areas. They're scenic and, you know, worth preserving. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Kimberly Scannell.
Good evening. It's evident that a lot of time and resources have been used to create this plan, and I thank you all for your efforts. I think it's important that both the town board and the planning board consider the rural, agricultural, and natural resource component of the comprehensive plan's vision map with regard to future proposed solar and wind projects. The vision map focuses on protecting key resources while supporting agricultural businesses and preserving our natural resources. I urge you all to keep this in mind, that the recommended actions set forth in the comprehensive plan include developing a plan of action to protect and to preserve open space agricultural lands in environmentally significant areas of the town, while protecting the town's unique plants, animals, and habitats, particularly in the western, upland, and rural areas of the town, which is where I live. Perhaps considering the goals set forth in the comprehensive plan, the town's existing solar farms code and wind facility code should be evaluated to ensure that they reflect the current needs of the town and future development of our community. Thank you.
That's it for the comp plan.
Is there anybody else? If there's somebody else who'd like to speak but didn't sign, just state your name.
No, I did sign my name,
Oh,
What is your first name?
Tracy Lamanek.
Maybe it's on, is there another one there, Bob?
No, there's nothing else there.
That's okay, I'll add you to the
It's
list.
fine. It's fine.
That's okay.
Go on and on.
He just brought it up.
Hey, I was told to bring it up.
I was the
That's okay.
second name on the second sheet.
I only got one sheet, Bob. What did you do?
There
Oh,
was three.
hang on. No, he gave me a blank sheet and then this one. My fault. I'm so sorry. So let's just see. Yes, Tracy, you're all set. Sorry about that.
Okay, nobody else ahead of me that signed up?
Nope, no, you're good.
Okay, I'm Tracy Lamanek. I live at 813 Crawford Road. And I have a couple of comments, very brief on the draft for the recommended actions for rural and agricultural. Couple of things just in spelling or whatever here. I'll bring that to your attention. There's a couple of words that need editing. But beyond that, what I see missing on here is any mention of forestry. Maybe we're covering forestry under agriculture, but it's really something different. I'm quite involved with an organization, the New York Forest Owners Association, fairly well known. I'll give you a couple of cards from the Forest Owners Association. One of the best uses of some of that land on the top of that hill where the solar farm is being proposed is regeneration of forest. That hill was known as Yantapucheberg. Some of you people may have heard that quite some time ago. I was quite involved with the history of it and so on through SKIAC. And that was back when I was writing an outdoor column for the Schenectady Gazette. Yantapucheberg, translated from a combination of Dutch and American Indian, meant the hill where John plants his corn. And the story behind this is the Indians thought that every Dutchman was named John. And so that's where Jan came from, which evolved into Yankees. But my concern is that there should be more emphasis on regeneration of forest land. That's probably one of the best uses of some of that land. Originally it was mainly sheep pasture. John planted his corn down on the flats rather than up on the mountain, although there are ghost furrows there in the woods in several places. I've lived there for 59 years, by the way. And I own 150 acres that borders the property that the solar farm is intended to be put on, including land that I believe is mine that appears on their site plan as part of where they're going to put solar panels. I think that I haven't had the opportunity to really prepare for this that much. It kind of just recently came to my attention. I was out in my woods looking for mushrooms and found surveyor's ribbons. And that got me involved, and since then, Kimberly Scannell has been trying to keep me up to date and get involved here. I'm not here to talk about the project as such. My concern is that there ought to be more emphasis on forestry, and I'll give you a couple of cards. I only have a couple, but they're the New York Forest Owners Association. and I'd be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
So that's it, unless there's somebody else that wants to go.
You don't have my name written down as a sign-up?
Yeah, but you don't want to talk about the comp plan, do you?
Oh, that, no.
I'm just doing the comp, that's okay, the comp plan, that's public hearing 1.
I'm the sign-up.
Did we have one more or no?
Not for comp.
So is there anyone else in the audience that might not have had a chance to sign up for talking about the comprehensive plan that would like to speak right now? Okay. Megan, is there anybody on Zoom who's either asked, who's had any statements?
No.
I'd like to make a motion to keep the public comment period for the comprehensive plan open.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion to keep the comprehensive plan public hearing open. The motion was made by Mr. Mastriani, seconded by Mr. Dodson. Ms. Marco, will you call the roll?
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera to keep the public hearing open.
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Okay, and I do want to mention one other thing. The public hearing will remain open. There are 2 appendices that have been added, and they will be posted to the town website. I will open the public hearing on introductory law number 7 of 2022, permitting and regulating the raising of chicken hens. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Dawn Wigan?
Good evening, I'm Dawn Wigan. I live at 1908 Bureau Avenue. I have a rodent problem because I live next to chickens. On average, what my cat goes out into her backyard only, would get in a season of mice. She's bringing in weekly. I'm finding mice outside during the day, roaming around. They're nocturnal animals. Last week, I went out into my driveway, and something larger than a mouse had carried an egg from the neighbors onto my property and ate that there and left the eggshells. I have no idea what animal came over, if it had rabies. I feel like this is a public health hazard. I'm over in Colebrook, and the lot sizes simply don't support this wildlife activity. I don't want the wildlife on my property. DEC has regulations that I am not allowed to trap them and rehome them. And I'm not a person that can kill all these animals. So I would like to propose that if the town enacts this law, that the permit fees to have these chickens covered, an animal control officer, a full-time animal control officer. We used to have this service, and it was a very good service. They're permitted to come and empty your cages, and they rehome this wildlife, and they know how to deal with these animals that have rabies. I have not seen rats at my property yet, but it's a concern that I'm going to get rats as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Denise Legacy?
Good evening. My name is Denise Legacy, and I live at 1152 Eugene Drive. I am here in support of the amendment for the local law with regards to raising chickens. Prior to this meeting, I presented you with some online and paper petitions and some literature. So I just want to touch base on a few more things. Before I do that, I would like to thank you, the Town of Rotterdam board members, for taking this seriously, and I appreciate your time. It does mean a lot. Thank you. So unbeknownst to me, chickens were not allowed in Rotterdam. I've lived here for 40 plus years, And I've owned my home for 25 years, and after 9 years of having them, I was given the code violation. Now, I know I'm not the only one in this town that has chickens, and to this day, I don't know what the complaint was, other than they're not allowed. Are there valid concerns? Well, yes, I guess there are, but I still have never been entitled to know what the complaint was on my chickens. So it is my understanding that the Planning Commission had 4 members against this. And I did review the meeting minutes from the meeting, and I'm not going to quote word for word. Anyone can look that up. And due to time restraints, I'm just going to say that the majority of the concerns is that people don't feel that our town code enforcement would be able to monitor and enforce the various regulations that are proposed. And it's going to be a code enforcement nightmare. One member, and I will quote this, says, it kind of blows my mind that with all the issues we have in the town, we are worried about chickens. I think there are bigger problems than chickens. I had a couch on my street for almost 3 months and had to complain about it, and that was a couch. I don't know how we're going to enforce chickens. My response to that is yes, we do have bigger problems than chickens, so why are you against this? And where is our faith in the town code enforcement department? Another issue brought up was that chickens can possibly attract mice and rodents and those types of things, which this woman just brought up, and concerns about sanitary issues. I understand that. I'll touch base on that in a minute. The last concern that was brought up was residents may not have enough land. So those were really the only 3 things that came up against this. I do think some of these are valid concerns. I also think that some of these things are just opinions and comments from those who are uneducated and misinformed about chickens. So in regards to the mice and rodents, those are types of things that are in people's sheds, garages, piles of wood, garbage cans, broken down cars, backyards, and even in houses. I've had chickens, again, for 9 years. I know people who've had chickens. I never had a rodent issue. Chickens are great pest control. They're omnivores. They help reduce the insect population. They scratch around for bugs such as ticks and spiders, and they eat a variety of weeds and disease-carrying insects. I've never had a mice or a rodent issue once. I'm not saying that that's not an issue, but I'm just speaking on my behalf and some of the people I know that have chickens, and I'm not going to turn in anybody else that has chickens in our town. Chickens are also confined to a coop in a yard, or they should be, and they will be if this is passed. They're not able to roam around and spread their feces like cats and dogs, and we all know that there are cats and dogs all over the place in this town. People don't obey the leash laws as well. So their feces are going to be contained to the yard if they follow the regulations. And again, chickens spend hours each day just bathing and cleaning themselves to maintain good hygiene. There's no evidence that they are stinky, that they hurt property values, and they're not ordinarily noisy in volume, much less so than a dog barking or a lawnmower. The fact is that chickens require no acreage at all to be well kept. Residences of all major U.S. cities, including New York, Denver, and LA, keep chickens with no acreage at all. And suggesting that my neighbors are going to take care of, or not going to take care of their chickens is like saying my neighbor's not going to take care of their dogs, their cats, their bunnies, their children, their garbage, and the upkeep of their homes. Chickens are not the problem. So what are the major concerns? Obviously, this code enforcement. Are they saying that Rotterdam can't enforce codes? Our town code enforcement department is understaffed compared to other towns and unable to keep up with the workload they have now. Is money an issue? Have other towns who permit backyard chickens have had issues? I don't know if that is, and I would be curious to know. There are places, there's towns like Niskayuna and Guilderland who recently proposed it. Are they having issues? I like to see both sides of the story, but obviously I'm here in support of the chickens. So lastly, what makes Rotterdam so different from neighboring towns and other suburban areas and cities of the whole country? Is there no confidence that our residents and code enforcement can handle 6 hens living in their backyards who meet the regulations proposed? And that's all I have to say. I would invite anybody over to my house that would like to have some more education on backyard chickens and put the myths to rest. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Jacob Legacy?
Hello, I'm Jacob Legacy of 1152 Eugene Drive. Thank you for having me here and being able to speak. I am in favor of having backyard chickens. I only have a few things to say. I really wanted to concise this down. I think not legalizing chickens will have more of a negative impact on Rotterdam than legalizing them, and here's why. Many people in Rotterdam already have chickens. We know this. They're going to continue to have chickens whether the law allows it or not. I know many people, they've even had geese, ducks, messenger pigeons. I've even known of a monkey that got loose in Colebrook. Okay, people have exotic pets. People will continue to have these pets illegally in Rotterdam. I'm not in support of it. Obviously, I want it to be legal and done right. Not legalizing chickens will only allow people to purchase chicks or eggs at stores such as Tractor Supply or just no-name farms. The problem with this is there's no standardized health for the chickens. There's no standards in that. We don't even know the gender of them. So people could be possibly getting roosters. So there's no account for the insurity of the health or anything in these chickens bought there. So outlawing these chickens will mean no permits, no assessment of people's properties in which the chickens are supposed to be held. Also, illegalizing it will have no guidelines to follow. So people that still have chickens, they don't really know if they're doing things right. So I also think legalizing chickens isn't going to affect the code enforcement. I mean, if we think about it logically, how many people are going to buy chickens as soon as they're legalized anyhow? I don't imagine everybody's going to buy 10 chickens and let them loose like dogs on people's lawns. If we allow chickens in Rotterdam, we can put in place regulations, sanitary guidelines that will not only benefit Rotterdam, it'll do the right things for the animals, bring the community together as a whole, so we can create something that we can actually plan for and make sure nothing gets chaotic with something like backyard birds. The goal of legalizing chickens is obviously just to inform the public and make a change for the better. It's all about sustainable living, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
You wanted to speak, right?
What's your last name?
Craig Foot.
Okay, he's on the next list. All right, so Bob Godlewski.
Thanks. Blame me. I gotta blame you now.
Bob Godlewski, 1046 Manus Drive. I want you to know I have nothing against chickens or eggs. I heard Mrs. Legacy, where she lives was my grandfather's farm. Okay? I am quite familiar with that area. I grew up on Highbridge Road. But that was 65 years ago. And believe it or not, I was 9 years old once. Back then, there were a lot of small little farms in Rotterdam. It was more rural. All right? And people did have chickens. And primarily because those individuals went through the Depression. And the only way you could eat during the Depression, if you want to farm. Because that's how my grandparents survived. Now, like I said, we've gone from rural in 65 years, and we're very urban, a lot more density with apartments and everything. And like I said, I like chicken and eggs, but there's a right place for everything. I went online and I looked at the petition. One thing that I noticed, to me a petition usually has signatures. The other thing that I noticed, I will say the majority of those signatures were not people that lived in Rotterdam. And to me, to have a solid, valid petition, it has to reflect the people it's going to impact. And that's my concern about that petition. The other thing is I've heard comments about enforcement. And being in Rotterdam for a long time, believe me, there's a lot of sins and people that be getting away with things, but that doesn't make it right. And that's what's important here. I don't want to guess how many code enforcement people we would have to hire. We cannot enforce our water regulations, let alone requirements for chickens. It sounds nice, but it's impractical. And it all boils down to cost. All right? We have much more things to spend our money on, as the budget shows. The other thing that concerns me, and by the way, I grew up on a farm, I know how chickens have an odoriferous odor. Believe me, I know. The other thing that concerns me, even in my neighborhood where I live now, we have coyotes and foxes. If you allow this to go forward, it will be like ringing the dinner bell for all the wild animals. Because yes, you're going to have cooped up areas. But believe me when I tell you, I don't know of any fox or coyote that can't dig under it, go over it, because when they're hungry, and by the way, the cat populations is going to vanish in the town. Because now all these predators, there's a dinner bell going off. There's chickens. That wasn't me, by the way. And I guess the only other point I want to make is, I grew up on a farm. Chickens were a necessity. Chickens are not pets, all right? And I understand what the lady's saying, but they're not pets. That's why they're called farm animals. Thank you.
Renee Mertens.
Thank you for allowing this time. My name is Renee Mertens. I'm from Maida Lane, Rotterdam. Didn't want to talk to the chickens. It's actually something I've considered myself, but I was hoping that someone like this brave lady back here who very elegantly explained how she raises her chickens. I think the biggest concern that we have here is that we just need to really set some good guidelines and give some education to people that are interested. That they would have to have a coop and how to maybe set up a fencing area for them, and that there are cleaning requirements. There are good and there are bad. I think with Agway, I think they have a minimum of 6 chicks. I think they should be hens only, no cockle-doodle-doo roosters, keeps the population in control. But what I really wanted to speak to is one thing I have not heard here, and I'm not going to repeat what others have said already, is we have already seen supply chain problems, particularly in 2020, and we had shortages. And I think for the people that would like to be homesteaders in their backyard here in Rotterdam should have that opportunity to do so. I raise a garden, I raise my food, not all of it, obviously. I'm a gardener. I've been told I'm quite a good gardener, as a matter of fact. And my garden is quite envious of some people. Do I want chickens? I don't know, but I think I would like to have the opportunity of doing it and not breaking code in Rotterdam. If the time comes and we do not have a good chicken supply, I would like to see I can get eggs and have protein in my house. With the inflation, and we know it's not stopping, it's going and going and going. I want to be able to raise birds. I would like to have quail, maybe. Quail are very easy to raise. So I can go on here a little bit more. I personally want it because I don't trust our food supply. I know Netherlands are having quite a problem over there right now with their farms. If no one's really paying attention, go Google that. they don't have fertilizer. And there's quite a big protest over there, and guess what? Media is not reporting at all. It's coming here really soon because we have a supply with fertilizer problem with agricultural. So I'm watching some of the farms out in Rensselaer County. My daughter rides horses, and the corn farmers this year did not plant corn, did not. They planted soy so they can put oxygen and nitrogen back into the ground because corn takes it out. If they can't put it into the ground, the corn does not grow. They're doing that now, locally in Rensselaer County. So I'm watching a lot of changes with agricultural. I really wanted to talk a little bit more to the comprehensive plan. Thank you for keeping that open because I'll be back next week about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Craig Flood. I live at 21 Princetown Road here in the town of Rotterdam. And first I may say that I am either pro or con chicken. What I am concerned about is the legislation that you may pass and regulations go along. Last time I was here, I addressed the issue of how the town should not move its offices to the Viewport Mall. And I brought you statistics and information, and that's what I plan to do this evening about the chicken issue. What you may or may not know, and you can check this, and the source I have used is, one is called backyardchickens.com. It is a informational site in which 19 various towns and municipalities in New York State took part of raising chickens in their towns and has the outcome of each one of those. What you may not know is this. Chickens eat a pound of food a day per chicken. They also produce a pound of manure per day per chicken. If you have 10 chickens, you're going to eat 10 pounds of food and create 10 pounds of manure. Each chicken needs a 12-inch perch per hen. 10 chickens, 10 feet. You need 4 foot of run per hen. 10 chickens, 40 feet. And they suggest you add an additional 50 feet for healthy living chickens. They should never be allowed, or structure should never be allowed to be attached to a garage because, as other people have mentioned, the stink does not go away. It's never going to go away. Chickens aren't pets. They are not pets at all. They do carry diseases and germs because they do eat the bugs and everything else in town. And hugging them and that gives you those exact same things. They cannot fend for themselves. And we heard about coyotes, foxes, and everything else. They need access to fresh water and food all day. They do need to scratch dirt, and they need to eat grass. So when you are planning, whether you go pro and or con, I ask that any legislation be passed that takes these considerations in there. And it should be based upon the number of chickens a person has to raise. If you're going to raise 20, of course, you're going to have 20 foot of run, 20 foot of perch, 100 foot of run. All I'm asking is that if you do pass any legislation or any legislation that the planning board goes in there, that someone review the site and use that as a basis at a minimum for anything that happens in the town of Rotterdam. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Brenda Trojan.
Again, you guys know the drill. This is the original. Are you sure?
Brenda, we're still in chickens.
We're going to be talking about chickens too.
Okay.
It didn't say, I signed up, it didn't
You
say
said
we can
chicken.
only talk about chickens.
But you said chickens, and then the next one will be that.
Well, fine, then I'll talk about chickens and I can talk again, right? Should I give you
Yeah,
8 minutes?
absolutely.
Correct.
All right,
You're correct.
terrific. I don't have one for him for some reason. All right, I'll hold off on these, since I can't talk about it. Chickens, Brother Erosion, 1033 6th Street. Don't know why I have to keep going through this all the time. I don't know what the problem is with chickens. Mr. Godlewski, I grew up on a farm too. We had chickens. Chickens are valuable necessity. I don't know why Rotterdam doesn't let us have chickens. I was already telling my friend we're going to do chickens. To save money on produce, have healthy produce. You talk about code enforcement, and you talk about the fact that the chickens lay feces, which can easily be swept up, and if you have a garden, you throw it in your garden, you got fertilizer. You guys are worried about that. I don't know you, but whoever is worried about that, but you're not worried about the feral cats in Rotterdam who are spreading feces all over the place, and germs, and possibly rabies. That you're not worried about. The reason why we have foxes and all those animals coming into our town, does anybody know why? It doesn't take a rocket scientist. You start building, you start taking away their natural habitat by building the apartments and stuff. They have no place to go but wherever they can go. So you can't blame the chickens for wolves. I mean, I got straight. I live in Carmen, and I'm getting wild animals in my yard that I've never seen before. And you know why? Because we're knocking down their habitat. They have no place to go. So you can't blame it on the chickens. I'm in favor of the chickens because you know what? I can't spend $4 a dozen for eggs. Nobody can. I want to do chickens, and I see no problems with having chickens. But I'll be back.
Holly, that's it for the chickens. Is there anybody that maybe didn't sign up to speak about the chickens and didn't get a chance to?
I just have a quick question. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You go first.
My name is Ronald Beck. I live on 1022 Vincent Avenue, and I've had chickens next door for almost 3 years now. And I contacted the town. Of course, it was COVID, so that kind of code enforcement was kind of tough. But you know, several neighbors, myself, made a lot of different phone calls to the code enforcement people, and it's not just the code enforcement person going to the house and checking on something. From what I was told by the code enforcement person, he has to have a request or a delinquency or whatever report made out. Then he has to write the people a letter. All right, and if the people don't respond to the letter, then he writes another letter. If they don't respond to that letter, then he goes and has to talk. Well, you can't, because it's private property, you can't just go look. All right, and people don't answer the door, and they're working during the day when the code enforcement people are working. So it's a long, drawn-out process. All right, and it's chickens. I mean, it's not like you've got, fighting dogs or something. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal. The problem is that nothing ever really happens. Okay, there's no follow through, change in personnel. You actually end up having to have a warrant made out so that you can actually go and look at the yard in the private property. All right, and like I say, it's been 3 years, and it's not like we've just kind of dropped the ball either. So I mean, we were trying to be a pain in the neck, but we would call occasionally. And but the bottom line is, the woman that talked earlier about what she does with her chickens is not. I mean, it sounds like she's a enlightened owner, okay? She does everything right, all right? How many of those are there? You know, and especially if, you know, they're not gonna answer the door when the code enforcement guy comes, you know, and they're gonna ignore all these requests and everything. That's a lot of work for the code enforcement person. It's frustrating as hell for the person that makes up the request, all right? My neighbor doesn't talk to me anymore, which is, I guess, okay. But, you know, the thing is that it gets to the point where it's really not worth the aggravation for chickens, all right? When they were first there, I didn't think that they would be a problem. I was trying to be a good neighbor. And, but I've got, all of our lots are 50 by 150, all right? The chickens' coop was, or the fenced-in area, all right, was 10 feet from my front porch, all right? And so they make a lot of noise. I mean, people don't, maybe it's just these chickens. They weren't roosters, but man, I mean, they sounded like Canadian geese sometimes, you know, and I had that every day. We try, my fiance and I would try and sit out on the front porch, you know, quack, 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 you know, and, you know, so it was kind of a pain in the neck. And, you know, and then they would get out and they're in my yard, and then I always thought, you know, if one of them gets killed on my yard, then they're gonna think that I did it. You know, I mean, it's just a pain. And I know that the rules state 9,000 square feet. Now, 50 by 150 is, I think it's 7,500 square feet, so they couldn't do it anyway. And 25 feet from a property line ain't gonna let them do that anyway. But they didn't have they just said no chickens, you know, previously, or the way it is right now. I can't get rid of them, all right? The town is not getting rid of them. I'm not really complaining about the town. I know that you got a lot of things to do, all right? But the enforcement is gonna be a bear. And you don't have, everybody doesn't do the same, doesn't have the same neatness, quality of taking care of the animals, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, it'd be nice if everybody did, but they don't. So, the other thing is, when I first had them, I've been here for 40 years. I never had a rat around the house. And right after they got them, all of a sudden there was a rat dead in my driveway, you know. So what killed it, I have no idea. But I don't think it was the chickens. But, yeah, but anyway. All right, that's about all I wanted to say. But they're not quiet. You know, maybe some of them are, but the ones that were next door to me are not quiet. So, but anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
Are you talking chickens? Okay, I am talking chickens. I will only be a minute. Tony and Avery, 374 Princetown Road. Couple quick things. So I did not know a lot about chickens until I met my friend. They are her pets and her animals. I would ask how many people in this room during COVID, when the supply chain was very low, went to Schoharie or found a friend who raised chickens and got their eggs. Because really, for the first time during that time frame, I started having my dad go out and get me eggs out of Schoharie, because eggs were either, we couldn't find them, or they were just so expensive. So I learned a lot from her. Her yard is very clean. Her chickens are well kept, but chickens are like any other animal. They have to have responsible owners. And in Rotterdam, we have a lot of people that are not responsible pet owners, such as dogs or cats. And just like you might get scratched or bitten or whatever from a dog, that's not really going to happen with a chicken. I mean, you'd have to get up pretty close and personal or be in someone's yard.
So unless you had someone that was a very irresponsible owner, for the most part, if they have their coops and they are being raised for food, I think most people are trying to become educated to be able to feed themselves, and maybe not homestead in the way that we think of, but starting to move towards that. More gardens, more feeding ourselves, more bringing our own food into our house. And I don't think that that's an unreasonable request to allow us to be able to do that. Maybe having a course that would educate people on what they have to do before they get chickens would be a requirement. But I also think I have a little more faith in our code enforcement, so I'm not too worried about that. But it was eye-opening to me what it takes, and I think we do not like to know what it takes to get our food from where it really comes from to the table, and there are people here that are starting to want to go back to that, and I just don't think that should be overlooked. Thank you.
Is he talking about chickens?
Well, I said no. I just want to know, are you going to talk about the comprehensive plan or chickens or just?
This is another subject.
All right, so
Okay, then that's
yeah,
privilege of the floor.
Oh.
and I have people on the list for that.
Oh.
I'll call your name. That's okay.
3 times the charge.
That's okay.
That's all right. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else that would like to speak about the proposed law to allow chickens? Anyone else? Megan, is there anyone on Zoom?
I have a question about this. Does that apply to the rural part of the town as well, or is it just the suburban part of the town?
The zoning currently allows chickens on the western side of town, even in some of the...
There's certain zoning districts identified in the law that would allow for it. It's the A district, the agricultural district, the R1 district, the RA district, and I believe the R2 district.
Yeah, you answered my question, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we keep this public hearing open to allow, again, the public to consider the comments that we received from the public tonight, and potentially maybe we'll see some more residents of the town commenting on this before we close.
I'll second the motion. And just so that you know, this is a motion to keep public hearing number 2, the introductory local law number 7, open. Ms. Marco, will you call the roll?
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
We vote no.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
So there's 1 absent, 1 no, and 3 yes.
And motion carries. We will now move on to privilege of the floor. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Please remember to state your name and address, and you'll have 4 minutes to speak.
Dean Romano?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dean Romano. I'm the Executive Director for Rotterdam EMS, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with everybody about an issue with the ambulance service and EMS in our town. As you have heard me speak before about this, our EMS system in town Rotterdam is a completely fee-for-service system, and it's been here, a local EMS system, for over 80 years. It's an award-winning system. We have had Paramedic of the Year, EMT of the Year, Agency of the Year, Leadership of the Year, and all these things over the last several years, and we continue to do well and be at the top of our game. There's some things that have happened, however, in EMS, in the industry, and we can no longer keep up with inflation, the cost of fuel, the cost of supplies, and the fee-for-service is not kept up with salaries. And so we are looking to the town for some help. As you know, Rotterdam EMS is completely unfunded through the town since 2013. We are asking that the town would consider that when you look at the town fire departments and the budget the town fire departments have, and the number of calls that the town fire departments do, in comparison to what the ambulance service does and the funding that follows that. We ask that we would make this right. So I'm asking that the town consider creating and establishing an ambulance district for the town to stabilize funding for Rotterdam EMS and EMS in the town of Rotterdam and fix this problem forever. And I am very concerned that this situation is not going to go away. In fact, it is probably going to be this administration that is the administration that finally fixes EMS in the town of Rotterdam forever, or finally kills it forever. And so I'm asking the town to please consider establishing a ambulance district in the next election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melvin Mintz?
Thank you. Melvin Mintz, reside at 2273 Helderberg Avenue. I don't mean to bore any of you with my personal remarks, but it has to do with the ambulance service. August 5th last year, my wife fell. At 5 in the morning, we had to call the ambulance service, and they showed up and took us to St. Peter's in Albany. That's where she wanted to go. Since then, my wife has passed away January 30th of this year. But I decided when I saw the Gazette this morning to usually come here for different purposes, I decided that I want to give a $100, I'm not a wealthy man, but I'd like to give $100 to the ambulance. And I'd like the public to consider donations from this day forward at least, until the town board can look at the budget and see where within the budget some kind of money can go towards the ambulance service, how little or how much, and that the people that are here or so can consider giving money to the ambulance service. If they would please notify the Gazette, and with the phone number, how and where donations can be sent. I don't want them spending money on letters to all the residents of the town and all kinds of things. I'd rather they look for the donations. I think our residents are approximately 30,000 strong plus, and if they can contribute from whatever they could. I made this decision after I read the paper this morning. I thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like Juliana Kamara. I'm sorry if I'm not.
Juliana Kamara.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. There you go.
Giuliano Camarena, 713 Curray Road. I'll make this rather brief since the debate's mostly on chickens and what have you, so my apologies for boring you. But I want to say good evening, members of the Rotterdam Town Board and residents of Rotterdam. My name is Giuliano Camarena, and I am a senior and a proud senior at Mahonison High School. Tonight I come before you to discuss in disgust of a board member's conduct. Mr. Mastriani, a few days ago, I became quite aware of your comments about 9/11. Now, to fact check these sources to make sure they are accurate and true, I went on to multiple news sources, including your own social media, to find what you actually said about 9/11. And I'll read some of your quotes since we have a time limit. Quote, 9/11 is a lie, here is why. No black boxes were found. Building 7 was an obvious demolition. Towers came down in 11 seconds, free-for-all acceleration. No debris, everything was pulverized. Fake media is complicit. 9/11 was a catalyst to happen. NSA, TSA, DHS, and FEMA, do they make you feel safer? And you went on with memes and pictures about that very awful day in our history. After reading this, I was startled and quite shocked. How can anyone, especially an elected member, say these awful things? 9/11 was a dark day in our nation's history, that the nation, somehow, the notion that this is somehow a conspiracy is foolish and beyond understanding. And it is disgusting and insulting to the families and the loved ones who are mourning their loved ones to this day, and the soldiers who fought in the wars afterwards to get revenge for that awful attack. I remember the first time I watched the 9/11 towers fall. I remember watching in history class. I remember the shock, the pain, the fear, the anger, and I wasn't even alive when it happened. Even every single year, I try to watch the 9/11 memorial to pay my respects to those who died that day, who were killed that day. Mr. Mastriani, have you ever been to the 9/11 memorial in New York City? I recommend you should. Not only as a grown adult, but as an elected member, you should educate yourself about what actually happened that day. I am disgusted to have someone like you representing this town and trying now to run for assembly. You should be ashamed of yourself and should resign for those comments that you made. 9/11 forever changed America. I remember watching the United States Congress go out that day and sing God Bless America. We as a nation showed the world that bin Laden and his terrorists failed to destroy the American spirit. I see you, Mastriani, try to undermine what happened that day, and is very un-American and undemocratic. The people of angry. Rotterdam, and this next part is to the people of Rotterdam and the people of New York District 111. It's the duty of every citizen to always research credible sources and to hold their elected officials accountable. I learned this through my own studies and through my own participation in government class that I attended in high school. I'm only 17 years old. My birthday is in December. I just missed the chance to vote. But you can. I ask yourselves, do you want some fringe conspiracy theorists to represent you for this district in the assembly? Do you want someone who only cares about their own political career? Or do you want someone who's actually going to care about you and acknowledge the truth when truth happens and call out bull when it happens? Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak today. Thank you, other board members, for your service. Good night and God bless America.
Bob Dudley. Bob Dudley.
I see you're going to have a discussion at the end of the meeting on the budget, and there will be no two-way conversation between the public. But I have a couple of questions. I don't know whether you can answer them now. I'll give you the item number and the page. Okay, it's page 53. It's A2701 270100, refund of prior year's expenses. I see that's up quite a bit, like it's almost $700,000. Does that represent some grant funding that we have, or what is that number? If you don't have the answer now, you know how to get a hold of me. The other item is...
What's the line number, Bob?
The line number should be A2701 270100. It's about halfway down the page. It's got a $705,000 item next to it. Matter of fact, I think there's only one other item that's higher than that. So I'm just curious what that is. All right. Now, like I said, if you don't have the answer now, I understand. However, now the other item is on the same page. Item 2610, fines, fees, and forfeitures. I notice we're projecting an additional $100,000 in revenue, and that's basically the work that the court does. Am I to assume that that they're getting more work in that department? And if so, I looked at the budget and I don't see where there's any additional employees being added. And the reason I bring it up, I know Councilmember Mastriani and the supervisor, I think it was a little over a year and a half ago, there was a meeting at the senior center when that board voted on giving the town the option of having another judge. And at that time, Judge Litz got up and a couple of people in that department, and they tried to explain to the board that it isn't they needed another judge. It's the fact that the volume of paperwork that supports the judges is so high that they can't keep up with it. So I would ask, and I know you're just on the tentative part of it, that you take a good look at that, because I'm only making a correlation between $100,000 more revenue, or there's got to be $100,000 worth of paperwork that's got to go along with that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Brenda Trojan. Sorry about that, I needed to talk to the young gentleman. Again, you know the drill. I think the last petition I gave you guys, I don't think I had a copy for Mr. Cristoso. Could somebody make a copy and please give it to him? And I do have an invoice for you. I'm being serious. This Armenian does not screw around.
Thank you.
Okay, Brenda Trojan, 1033 6th Street. Let me put my timer on so I make sure I keep my format. It's going to be an old hack story here. Need to know what's going on with Viaport. Need to know what's going on with the $1 million deposit that was given to Viaport. I know I'm going to hear you can't answer it because you're in negotiations or whatever. The public has a right to know what's going on with the $1 million deposit that this town board, not this town board, but the previous town board gave to Viaport. Is Viaport using that to make renovations for the old Kmart? What's going on with that $1 million kind of thing? We have a right to know. Mr. Cousteau last week talked to me and said something about the owners of Viaport, made a comment to him saying they didn't realize that Viaport, the owners of Viaport, were considered enemies of Rotterdam. Not once since June did I ever call the owners of Viaport enemies of Rotterdam. I stated facts. And the facts were, they were getting money, it wasn't staying here in Rotterdam, it was going to wherever it was going. It could go to Germany, but it wasn't staying here. So if that's considered an enemy, well, they've got the problem. They have the problem. I don't. The $34 million water bill, or you've got a petition. The petition will keep going. I know I only had 30 days. Not one person here told me, or Lisa who was helping me, that there was a time constraint. Not one. You tell me last week. Appreciate it. Mr. Mastriani, you see I'm still here. I didn't age out. I know that was addressed at the budget meeting. I'm addressing it now, because I'll guarantee you that one. I can't think of the word right now. You insulted people of a certain age group. To me, that was a discriminatory comment, even though you said that was not what I meant. But that's what you said. We don't have to worry about those group of people because they're aging out. How dare you? Those people that are, quote, aging out, they pay taxes to the town of Rotterdam. They give their last dime. And for you to make that comment, insulting. I don't care. Yeah, you're not insulting me. You know, I don't care what you think. But you insulted many seniors who can't afford to live in Rotterdam, but they love Rotterdam. And now when they hear that a town councilman said we don't have to worry about that because that's a group of people that are aging out, how dare you? How dare you? To the attorney. I asked a simple question last week, a very simple question that had nothing to do with confidentiality, had nothing to do with anything other than, please let me know the number, the percentage. What do I get from the board? Every darn time I've asked, you have to get the number of citizens that voted in the gubernatorial election. And last week, I said it 3 times, 12,720. It's not what I was asking. I was asking the percentage. And what do I get from the attorney? I don't work for the town of Rotterdam. I don't work for the people of Rotterdam. I work for the board. Well, guess what? These guys work for us. So, you work for us also. Okay, I don't care. And the other thing. Yeah, well, my 4 minutes are up. I'm going to take 30 seconds more. And then at the end, when I talk to you, and I have a witness who's not here now, comment was made. I'm not giving you the number. I don't have to give you the percentage. You don't like it, run for office, win, and vote me out. Now, what kind of comment is that made to a resident of Rotterdam? And Mr. Dobson, and I'm not joking, I'm giving you an invoice for 4 hours that I lost last week because you misrepresented the town meeting. Thank you very much, and I hope we get a lot more young men that was here to attend the meetings and to challenge the town board. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it, Maya, that I have.
I'm being serious.
Do you want to speak?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I did not plan on coming back up here to speak. Kimberly Rickers-Cannell, 257 Crawford Road. While I am happy to see that our youth is participating in our town government, I feel well. I think that everyone on the town board is entitled to their own opinions. I value people that challenge and question authority, but above that, I value our elected representatives that show up when your constituents need them. I am very thankful for Joe Mastriani. While we may not share exactly the same political beliefs, I value that he has shown up for my little part of the town of Rotterdam by coming to a recent meeting. I also value that he gave up a Sunday to help my neighbors and myself kind of check out things that were going on in our neighborhood. It's not appropriate for me to discuss a solar project at this meeting, but after listening to what I just heard, y'all have your own lives and your own opinions, and in my opinion, that doesn't need to get in the way of what you do with your job when you come to work for us, and I would just like to thank you, Mr. Mastriani.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak under privilege of the floor but hasn't signed up for it?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity again. My name is Renee Mertens, and I'd just like to also speak to some of the comments that were made here tonight. I am an advocate of free speech, first of all. For the young man, he has a lot of passion, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes they don't know because they haven't lived life yet, and they don't question questions. They haven't looked into deeper things. They haven't looked at our Constitution and what our Constitution has to say about certain matters, about privacy. And the TSA definitely breaks a lot of constitutional authority under the Fourth Amendment. I remember that day very well. I have 2 children, actually 3. At the time I had 2. And one was a kindergartner, and he was afternoon, and the other one was in 3rd grade. And I kept my kindergartner home, and I highly debated if I wanted to go and pick up my oldest son that day. I know people that have died in that tower. I work for the New York State Tax Department. They lost 40 employees that day. And we are always taking a moment of silence and we reflect on that. I have a lot of friends that questioned that day. I know people who were first responders and were in those buildings that day. And they have questions that weren't right. They question authority. They question government committees not being forward with a lot of information. So I actually look at Joe and I'm like, good for people like Joe. You don't have to agree with him. I don't think he's nuts. I think he's brave. I think he's brave that he brings a different perspective if you agree with it or not. I also heard his comment because I was here that one night for the budget. And I think he misspoke, but he definitely didn't say it the way that it was presented here tonight. So we were concerned about how to communicate with people in the town that don't have access to the same information we have because they don't have computers, internet, smartphones. And he was saying they will probably be phased out because they're going to be bringing those services there, and it was taken out of context. And you can read it either way you want to. I know the town is doing a good job. They're really trying to reach every person in this town. Every single person. So you can misread things. You can be kind. I think kindness goes a lot further than anger. I think that's the problem with our society today. They want us to be angry. They want us divided. And I don't agree with it, and I will not succumb to it. I will not be vulgar. I will be bold. I will speak my mind with kindness. And I think people should start learning from that example as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that might be in the audience that would like to speak? At privilege of the floor, you can speak about whatever you want, but maybe they didn't sign up.
Yeah, my name is Ron Schlag. I live at 230 Autumn Run in Rotterdam. I wish that young gentleman was here to hear some of these comments. I wish he hadn't left. I think that it would benefit to have an open dialogue. I've gotten to know Joe over the past year and a half. I don't see what questioning a narrative, I don't see what's wrong with that. I think our country was formed on dissent. I think our country was formed on questioning the narrative and questioning and not getting in line. I've seen things over the last 5 years that I never thought that I would see. In my life, I've seen cities burn. I've seen federal buildings attacked. I've seen policemen attacked and hit with bottles, cars flipped over, spit on. My father was a law enforcement officer in the 1970s. He was also a World War II vet. He was in a prisoner of war camp in Nazi Germany. My father said to me before he died in 2003, probably about 2001, he said, Ron, you need to be careful of what's happening in the world. The one world government, the one world currency. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, you're nuts. I said, this isn't happening. What are we hearing about? We're hearing about globalism. We're hearing about a one world government. We're hearing about the potential of the dollar going away, digital currency. Maybe it wasn't so nuts. Maybe conspiracy theorists are ahead of their time. Maybe they look into the future and they see 30 steps down the road. Maybe they're playing 3D chess. I don't know. But I can tell you that this man has the right to question what is or isn't. He may be wrong, but there's a lot of things that don't add up. Listen, I wasn't alive when Kennedy was killed, but I think I know guns and firearms and ballistics. I don't for one chance in hell believe the Warren report that one man shot that president. There is no way. I don't think it's possible. Am I a conspiracy theorist? Am I nuts? Maybe I am. But I have the right to believe that. I have my First Amendment right to believe that. All of us have taken, or all of you have taken, an oath to uphold the Constitution. And I will tell you, I know this young man is a constitutionalist. He stands up for the Constitution. You don't have to agree with him. But again, it's Angelo Santa Barbara spending tons of money, sending lots of money, sending out information for political gain. So if you don't like Joe, you don't like what he said, don't vote for him, but don't call him un-American, and don't say he doesn't have the right to say those things, because he sure as hell does. And my father, one last thing, my father would see neo-Nazis, he would see white supremacists, he would see them marching. He was in a prisoner of war camp. He was ordered to be killed. He was ordered to be shot. His head was crushed with a rifle butt. I'm telling you, man, he would see them marching. He would see them protesting. And he would say, God damn it, I hate them. I don't agree with them. But I and a lot of my comrades, I almost died. A lot of my comrades did die. They have the right to do it under the Constitution, although I don't agree with it. That's all I have to say. Thanks all.
Thank you. Before I close the privilege of the floor, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Megan, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? And closing the privilege of the floor? We'll move on to resolutions. Our first resolution is Resolution 281 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Accepting town board meeting minutes.
Is there any discussion?
I just made some notes on that. I told you there was a couple more corrections.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
I'll make the motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Is there anything on the question? The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo's absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 282 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To accept revenue for the town clerk's office for September of 2022.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Anything on the question? Okay, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo's absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Our next resolution is Resolution 283 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers to the 2022 budget.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. I'll second the motion. Is there anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo's absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
The resolution is passed. Our next resolution is Resolution 284 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To reappoint Robert Caprera to the Board of Assessment Review.
Is there any discussion? Do I have a do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo's absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 285 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To call for a public hearing to amend Chapter 266 of the Code of the Town of Rotterdam.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo's absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 286 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To authorize amendment number 2 for engineering services for the salt shed storage and yard waste facility, processing facility.
Okay, any discussion? Do I have a motion? I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo's absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Dotson,
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani,
Yes.
Mrs. Collins.
Yes,
4 yes, 1 absent.
resolution passes. All right, that concludes our resolutions for tonight. Do any of the board members have anything on liaison reports? Okay. Does anybody, do any board members have anything they wish to say under miscellaneous?
Yeah, I'd like to just mention that we are having a budget session this evening, and I'd like to address the comments that were made regarding me being ageist. I know that Mrs. DeRozier didn't like when she thought her comments were thought to be xenophobic. The discussion that we were having was how much money we were going to put in the 2023 budget for mailers, because it is expensive to mail every single home within Rotterdam to communicate. And we learned in the first 9 months of our administration here that it is important to communicate with the entire community, and not everybody attends meetings or reads the newspaper or watches meetings afterwards. So we were having a discussion about how much money we wanted to allocate for that, and we welcome any and all feedback with regard to that. But I just thought that we would save some money by posting things online, but there is a segment of the population that does not go on the internet, so we agreed to budget some money in for mailers next year. Hopefully we do not have the same sort of circumstance we had this year with an unexpected bill in June for more than what residents anticipated.
Does anyone else have anything else that they'd like to say under miscellaneous? Okay. I will just remind everybody that I'm going to be calling next for a motion for our board to go into executive session for personnel matter and with the invited guest of labor attorney Nathaniel Nichols. But after we return from the executive session, we will be having a budget workshop, which you are allowed to stay to and listen to. Okay?
I'll make the motion to go into executive session.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo is absent. Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Dotson,
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani,
Yes.
Mrs. Collins.
Yes.
4 yes, 1 absent.
All right. The motion passes, and we'll enter into executive session at 8:22.